And then Nick, we have a second question, which comes from Facebook by an anonymous who states that, so they sold a property about 10 years ago, and they recently discovered that the second new owner, right, has abandoned the property and fled to a country after a massive drug raid. So we're back with criminals again. And then they say that they've been able to find out that the property has a registered charge on it via someone that they believe is a family member and owns a property development business in another part of the country. But what they're actually interested in is actually reclaiming the property that they sold a year ago. But it is the understanding that the property has been seized now by the police, which according to them has not been confirmed nor denied. But their question then goes around with regards to reclaiming the property or regaining the property again. How would does anybody have an idea as to how could they possibly move forward with efforts towards that?
Okay, so there's a lot of variables in that particular question, and there's a lot of stuff of information which we don't have. So really, the next step for our writer is to go on a information gaining sort of mission. Okay, what they've said to us is obviously there is a registered charge against the property now. What I think they're talking about there is probably something like a bond from a bank or something to that extent. Okay, so there is a mortgage that's been registered against the property. I'm not sure if that is perhaps actually the police. So a good starting point is, if you are going to encumber a property in South African law, okay, you can register what's called an interdict against a particular property, which means that the property has to be dealt with in certain ways. Okay, an interdict will be registered against the title deed of a particular property, and it basically says to the registry that there are certain contingents that are attached to this property, okay, that need to be accounted for if the property is going to be sold. Okay, and this can be a myriad of things in our particular law. Okay, servitudes, for instance. Some properties have servitudes which are registered in favor of one party to another. Okay, municipality has to cross over your property, or say you live in a particular area where your neighbors behind you have to access their own properties over a road that crosses your property. Okay, that is something that's going to be registered against the title deed of the property and has to be accounted for when the sale of the property occurs. Okay, if the property has been encumbered in any way and there's a prevention of a sale, by the police or whatever the case is, there should be an interdict which is registered against the property, which says, this property can't be sold because it's pending an investigation, or say anything else. That should have been registered against the property, and the only way you're going to find that out is by getting a title deed to this property. That can be done fairly easily. Whatever registry this property is registered in, you can go and try and acquire a copy of the particular title deed. Speak to your attorney. They can also try and get a copy of the title deed by means of something like Windeed. A copy can be acquired, and that's going to give you information about, are there any interdicts registered against this particular property which would prevent its sale? Okay, and what are the limitations of that particular interdict? Okay, is it for a certain period of time? Is it whatever the case is? And in the case of something like a bank, a bank's not going to prevent the sale, but that bond at the end of the day has got to be serviced by the seller in the circumstances. So your first step really is to go find this title deed. Once you do that, you're also going to figure out who owns that particular property. Okay, because our writer in, I don't know if they've actually got that information. They say that the newest owner who's owned it for a year, but do they know exactly who that particular owner is? Especially in circumstances with dealing with something where there's a criminal element. I don't know too many criminals who will register a property into their own individual name if they are going to be performing criminal acts. Generally, they'll have some sort of company or some sort of entity that it's registered in that's not attached to them. Okay, just obviously for anonymity purposes. So that'll give you information about who that particular owner is. Once you've got that, now you're in a better position to say, okay, well, is there an interdict which is going to prevent us from purchasing this property? If the answer is no, who is that particular owner, and how do we get in touch with that particular owner? Okay, and you could start going on that particular journey to try and get in touch with that owner and see whether they're interested in selling the property at all. If we sit in a situation where, I'm assuming that the charge that's registered against the property is in fact the bank, and the director or the owner of this property has now fled, it's very likely they're not going to be paying their bond or their mortgage in the circumstances. And you might be in a situation where that the bank is going to attempt to execute upon the property in due course. Okay, because remember, you can't enforce a sale by the seller in the circumstances. You're going to have to either approach them to say, are you willing to sell, and come to terms with them, or alternatively, if there is some sort of attachment by a bank and they are now executing upon that particular asset, that is a great opportunity for you to go, okay, fantastic, I can go to a sheriff's auction and execution, or the bank puts it up on one of the sales websites, Property 24, private property, or they have their own portals for these properties, and then you can try and get a sale done by that means, by approaching the bank and talking to the bank in the circumstances. So really, for me, the first step for you would really be to go on a fact-finding mission. Try get yourself a copy of the title deed, see what's registered against the property, find out who the owner is, and then you can start asking the relevant questions and start approaching the relevant people to try and see if you can get your hands on the property once again.
Yeah, so there you have it. So thank you for the question from Anonymous from Facebook. At this stage, obviously, it's important that you gather as much information as possible. You get all the necessary documents that you can legally get your hands on. And then with those details, obviously, you'll be able to then know what are some of the do's and the don'ts that you were able to embark on at this stage. And then that will obviously then give you more information as to if you are able to actually buy back the property. Which is, according to the question, your main interest is obviously regaining the property. And then once you're in that position to then buy back the property, then you can contact us at BSA or SLR, and then we can assist as much as we can in the conveyancing process or transaction side of things regarding that. So thank you to our viewers on Facebook. Thank you to everybody on YouTube for watching and for posting those questions. And I think that does sum it up for today's questions. And we'll be seeing everybody again next week. We'll be answering some more questions for everybody. Thank you, guys.
Well, thanks so
guys.
much.
Cheers.